Oh boy, this is going to get awkward real fast. Hi, hey, hello. Welcome back to episode 24 of Trail Society, brought to you by our friends over at Free Trail. I'm Corrine Malcolm.
I'm Keeley Henninger.
I'm Hillary Allen.
You guys sound so excited about your names this week. This is great. Okay, we've got a lot to talk about today, but first and foremost, we've got some exciting news. We kind of teased it a couple of weeks ago. We are working with some new sponsors moving forward for the rest of the year. And the first one is the kind folks over at Athletic Greens. That's right. We are the umpteenth podcast brought to you by Athletic Greens, but we've had a lot of fun working with their product, trying their product. I traveled with it to Tahoe. It was kind of nice to have in my bag for that trip. And I'm wondering how you guys have been feeling about introducing Athletic Greens into your daily routine.
Yeah, I'm loving it. It's something that I've incorporated this year is being very diligent about recovery drinks. And so it's really cool I just add Athletic Greens to it. It's like adds just so much extra. It's like oomph to my recovery drink, I feel like. So that's just a really easy routine. And I actually also brought it in my van. So I have like a little stash there. So it's great. I can open up my little recovery cabinet and there it is. So
yeah, I feel like it's been helping me after runs as well, because I just pour the powder into the lovely bottle it comes with my Goo Roctane recovery mix, and then basically mix the two of them with water right after the run. And then everyone kind of looks at me weird at the trailhead because it's a green, like to-go smoothie, but it keeps super well. It doesn't get gross at all. And then you have like a pretty nice tasting recovery drink that has way more vitamins and minerals than just your regular one. So that's been really fun for me as well.
Yeah, I've been using it as my morning pick me up. It's a thing that I drink first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. It helps me absorb all those wonderful vitamins and nutrients that are within it. And then I've been trying to save my coffee for my post-exercise thing. I know I'm a weirdo who can run before having their morning Java, but I found that that's been a good balance of getting that hydration kicked off too for me, because otherwise I don't drink water, it appears at all. I'm a coffee and wine person apparently. But we're excited to kind of get to share this new product with you. You're probably not unfamiliar with it. I am certain, but because we're partnering with them, you can take advantage of their offers as well. And to make that super easy, we are going to have a link in our show notes, but essentially you can all visit athleticgreens.com/trail society. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/trail society. And not only with your purchase, you're also going to get a 1-year free supply of immune supporting vitamin D. So it's in a cool dropper form. I'm not much for, having a whole bunch of pill bottles lying around. So I think it's kind of a nice 1-2 punch between the Athletic Greens drink and having that little vitamin D pick me up.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're really excited to work with them. They are really excited about our message. And so we're glad that we got new partnerships, because we're going to be able to bring you guys more content and put more time towards it. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. I think we're going to dive into races to kick things off, because that's what everyone was doing this past weekend. I was talking about races, and the two of you lovely ladies were running races. Born start with some international flair while things were going on over here stateside. The next race in the Golden Trail Series was well underway in Chamonix. That was the Marathon du Mont Blanc. They actually had to cancel the 90K that goes along with it due to high winds, which is a super bummer. I had a bunch of teammates that were supposed to race the 90K, and then last minute they found out that the race was not going to happen. But the race itself, the marathon race, which is a big, I think, feature every summer over there in June, was spicy. Did you guys get to see any of the footage? I mean, obviously you're busy racing, but did you see any of the videos post-production from them?
I didn't get to see anything. I just was kind of looking at Instagram or individual people's kind of updates. To be honest, right after my race, we finished in a library with internet, and I just immediately put on the YouTube and the live stream for Western States. So
which we'll talk about in a second. But Jonathan Albin, who can maybe do no wrong.
He's so talented.
Living in Norway, so talented. Won the race with about 4 minutes to spare over David, who we talked about for the last Golden Trail Series race, in second, and Rui Ueda from Japan in third. I think everyone loves Rui Ueda. Super, super talented runner. Davide moved into first overall in the series, which is, kind of this I guess summer long battle between everyone. So that's exciting. And then in the women's race, Sarah Alonso, the young Spanish athlete who had such a brilliant run at Zagama, won overall. I think she won by 6 minutes. I watched her descent because normally this race ends on an uphill, but this year they had to descend all the way to the city center, which if you've been out there for UTMB is a gnarly descent back into town. She actually fell. There's this footage of her like totally belly flopping on the downhill and like popping back up, rounding the switchback, and someone throwing her bib at her because her bib literally like got ripped off her sports bra. And she just like tucks it under her sports bra and like keeps running. She wins by 6 minutes. She is now the overall leader in that series. Caitlin Fielder of New Zealand was second. She's now second overall in the series. She also had a great Zagama. And then the pride and joy of the USA, Danny Moreno, who I don't know, I'm her biggest fan, I think, went from 7th to 3rd in the final part of the race. And there's this photo of her coming towards the finish, and she's literally screaming as she's running to the finish line. She pushed all the way through the line. I have chills right now talking about it, but her 3rd place I thought was really, really exciting. And then honorable mention for our US listeners, MK Sullivan, former UNR coach, wonderful human being, finished 9th in the women's race. And I think that definitely deserves an honorable shout out for our North American listeners.
Yeah.
It was bonkers.
Cool. I don't know. I think I might be Danny's second biggest fan. So we
can fight about it. I think that's totally fine. Danny's great.
She's amazing. Yeah.
And then we mentioned that both these ladies were racing. Both Hillary and Keely were busy racing. And Hillary, there was a major throwdown at the San Juan Solstice.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell us we're going to talk about the race in detail in a little bit, but can you just give us a rundown of how the women's and men's race panned out for the podium?
Yeah, man, it was actually really exciting because you never know if someone's going to come up to a start line. But San Juan Solstice, like I was in it. Claire Gallagher was in it. Hannah Allgood was in it, who, if you guys remember her, she most recently won the Gorge 100K. And
so talented.
So talented. And it's funny, she's coached by Megan Roche. Claire's coached by David Roche. And Claire was like, David didn't even give me a heads up about this girl. And I was like, well, I am. She's really good. Like, let's go. And then even Sandy Napopper was there. Some really strong local runners from Boulder were also there. So it was like one of the most stacked
Nikki LaRochelle ran the race too.
Nikki LaRochelle, she's there. She's
so talented.
Exactly. She's on the skimo, like the national skimo team.
Mom of two.
Yep. Dang. She's so strong. She came in 6th woman. But it was just such a strong field. And so like, I was really excited to line up there. Cause it's a tune-up race for me for UTMB, but like, you want to run and compete and do well. And so it was really cool to have like these ladies, like just to kind of go back and forth if you couldn't really relax for a second. Obviously I didn't see the men's side, but we were actually all pretty close. Like, I know Hannah, she finished first, 6th overall. Claire was 7th overall. Claire was like closing hard at the end. I was just outside the top 10 for 13th, but we were all pretty close to like the top of the field anyway. So that was really exciting. I
don't know if you've read, but Hannah Allgood's Instagram post is so great. She's like, I look over my shoulder and I see, I didn't know you were allowed to have pacers at San Juan Solstice because
the last 10 miles. Yeah.
But she like looks over her shoulder and she like sees Claire's blue shirt and she's like, we gotta go. And just like takes off. Like,
with how many miles to go, do you know?
In town.
Wow. Right towards the very end. Like it was a nail biter, it sounds like.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Claire, at the end of the race, we're talking and Claire said that like, she knew that Hannah was like there. And so her partner was Corrine for her, and he was not ready to pace her. She was like, you're pacing me, let's go. Cause she like needed, I think, like the pick me up. And so like she started hammering, and like she knew she was maybe a couple minutes ahead of her, but she said she was like borderline being reckless at the end of the race. Cause she was like, where is this girl? And then she finally saw her as they entered like the town. And then by then it was like a little bit too late, but like it was pretty cool. I didn't have a pacer for the last bit. I actually admittedly kind of like let up a little bit at the end. I was like, I'm just going to run this in. But it would be
historic
like,
times too, right? Like
right.
You guys all ran like the 3 of the 5 fastest times in history at the race. And it's been around for a while.
Exactly. Well, 3 of the 4 fastest times. So I got the 4th fastest time, finishing 3rd in the race's history. Courtney still has the course record, but Hannah, she finished in 9:15, and that was the 2nd fastest time. And then Claire's time was the 3rd fastest time ever on this course. So crazy. Yeah. And Sandy's time too is like, normally typically a winner, like 10:30:35 has won this race in the past, and Sandy ran a 10:23 or something like this. So, she ran a fast time as well on this course.
And we should add real quickly before we mention the men's podium is that I just want to give a shout out. DNF has picked up some athletes recently, including Hannah Allgood this spring, and then David Sinclair as well recently, I think, has joined that team. So Vibram's also making some moves. They picked up Alyssa Clark, another Boulder athlete whose name is escaping me, and she definitely listens to this, so she will let me know. But I feel like Vibram and DNF have made some moves recently that are very exciting, and Hannah Allgood is included in that mix, which is very cool.
Yeah. And so Hannah's heading out to CCC, so we'll see her there.
Cool.
What about the men's race? Could you just give us the rundown of the top 3 there?
Yeah. So the men, we've got John Herrick. If you guys know him, he used to be a professional cyclist, a super strong runner. And now also, so he finished in 8 hours, 18 minutes. And then Ryan Sullivan finished 8:23, and Carlos Rubal finished at 8:50, 8 hours 50. So
are those local guys, do you know them or?
Yeah, those are all like pretty local guys. I think actually it's really funny to look at the entrance list and see how many are. It's so many Colorado locals. So we have a lot of strong runners here, and those are like some pretty solid times too on that course.
And not a huge spread over a 50-mile distance too, which is impressive. But speaking of women running fast times, we're going to talk about Western States, and we're just going to give a rundown of the top 10 men and top 10 women. I'm sure you are all familiar with what happened there. Maybe not. Maybe you hate Western States and avoided all media coverage this weekend. I don't know. I just got to assume that we've got a little bit of everything listening right now. But I saw Anne-Marie Madden, who finished 11th. So I'm just gonna give her a quick shout out on the infield as I was like done with my live broadcast shift. And I said, Anne-Marie Madden, hi. And she's like laying in fetal position. She's by Ruth and Ellie. And I said, I want to congratulate you on being the fastest 11th place finisher ever. Yeah. Because she was under 1940. Mm-hmm. And before 2018, like a 20-hour race would be third. Yep. So like, we just want to point out once again, like not as hot as last year, but pretty darn hot, 2018-esque temperatures. I was definitely melting on the track. And the men's spread this year was so much like closer together. Like, good job, men. Thank you for not having the race last year.
I called it in the beginning because I could see probably the top, aside from the top 4 men, I saw every single man till mile 10.
Yeah,
like
they were
with some of the girls. We were like, wow, I think the guys are being smarter this year, which it shows in the results. The first woman wasn't until like 13th or 14th overall, which last year Beth was like 6th or 7th.
Yep. So. And I think we had 3 women in the top 10 last year. Like, this was a much more, I would say, normal year as far as where women finished in the overall. And the men ran a smarter race than they did in 2021, be it just like being rusty, not racing in 2020. I don't know, but very proud of the men's field for holding it together this year. Women still had, 1 and 2 had some of the like were within the top 10 fastest times ever. And then the spread down to 10th and 11th in the women's field was just bonkers. Like so close and like so fast for like missing out on a top 10. Like, I can't believe that Anne-Marie Madden was under 1940 and didn't finish in the top 10, like very indicative of like the 2019 men's race where there was like a all out drag race for positions like 8th through 13th.
Yeah.
Like, super,
I mean, what the media kind of missed, I think, just because of like the differences in cameramen towards the end, was Tyler Green was like a minute back from Arlen with a mile to go.
Yeah.
He closed like so 40 seconds and came in like 80 meters behind him on the track. But like at that point, you can't catch him. But it was just so insane how fast they must have been running. His pacer got dropped, looked so ragged. I was like, oh my goodness, what happened? He's like, we were sprinting.
Yeah, which they've had to do before. Crazy. There have been in 2019, like the dudes that were duking it out for like 8th through 13th, they all dropped their pacers at the top of Roby Point because they were running so hard.
So crazy
at that point. But we'll give a quick rundown of the top 10 and then we're going to dive more into Western States coverage, in particular, Keeley's race out there more than anything in just a little bit. But Ruth Croft, our queen, our T-Rex queen, won in what we believe is the third fastest time.
Yep.
Ever. She was running Beth Pascal splits for much of the race. And then I think fell off a little bit at the end, but she PR'd by 12 minutes over last year. So she now has 2 of the fastest times ever at Western States. Elsa McDonald gives me hope for the future of my running career. At 41 years old, she ran the 10th fastest time ever in 17:46:46. Like was not necessarily closing to Ruth, but was like running. She ran such a brilliant back half of the race.
She ran so smart. Yeah. It was so impressive to watch.
Marianne Hogan, if you don't follow her on Instagram, you should. She was third and she posted the funniest reel of her trying to move after the race. It's pretty all time. She was third. Louisa Bueller of Switzerland was fourth. Emily Hawgood, fifth. And we should point out that means that it was New Zealand, Canada, Switzerland, Zimbabwe for the top 5 women. That's pretty cool, which means I'm going to say show favorite. Maybe we love all these women, but maybe show favorite goes to Leah Yingling, running the most brilliant back 40 miles ever. She was 6th, top American. Really, really happy for Leah Yingling. She's followed by Taylor Nolan in 7th. Camille Herron stuck it out for a top 10. Like so happy to see Camille.
So proud of her.
Most improved from 2021 in 8th. She had a lie down at Cal 2 for a little bit, which was a little bit scary. Yeah, a little scary to hear that she was taking a lie down at Cal 2, but got back up and made her way to the track to finish 8th. Katie Asmuth fought through GI distress, it sounds like, for the back 50 miles. Sounds like both ends of GI distress out there, and a tweaked foot, it sounds like, in 9th. And then from France, Camille Bruas rounded out the top 10 and in 1934. So I want to say, Anne-Marie Madden, once again, in 11th, missed out on the top 10 by like 3.5 minutes. So they fought really hard. And that was just a very impressive, once again, the women, very impressive in 2022. Anything to add to that as far as just being baffled and blown away?
No, I wanted to add that, like, I just feel like the women ran such a smart race. A lot of them were just so patient all day, and it paid off, and they started picking off people. And so it's like a good reminder that during a 100, you can make up so much ground. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, you can run really fast miles towards the end of a race like Western States and move up. I mean, we'll talk about this in the men's race too, but Tyler Green executed on that in a big way again this year, like just steadily moving up all day. But, I think we all knew that Adam Peterman could win. Were we confident it would happen? Maybe not, but, I don't know. Everything this kid touches turns to gold. Is that appropriate? The first,
and he's so humble, right? Yeah. He started off like 4th or 5th. Yeah. He didn't start off with an ego, which I feel like is really pertinent to racing 100 miles well, because I think the people who come in here super, super gifted, maybe never running before, a lot of times want to lead because they're used to running really fast, 50 miles or 100 Ks. And he just sat back for a while and then started picking up the pace, which was just so admirable to see for someone who was ranked so high and had been winning all these other races.
He didn't make, like, watching him run through these aid stations too, he didn't make like beginner's mistakes. It's not like he left without ice. He wasn't rushed. Like he had a good crew around him and good mentors. And it showed. Like he just kept moving really well. Early leader on the men's side. Did not see Jesus at mile 90 like he did last year. Hayden Hawks. While it looked like he was cramping up a bit and having some issues after about the Green Gate mile 80, Aid station, Hayden, I think, fought really valiantly to hold on to second place. That's kind of where he was running for most of the race last year, and then had a long sit down very late in the race, like mile 92. So I was really impressed with Hayden. I know what a competitor he is, and I know that you can't really temper that in an athlete like Hayden. And so for him to finish second this year, and I was very happy to see that happen. That's how I'll describe that.
Yeah, because he looks like he was pushing through some hard stuff.
Yeah. And I know he's really happy with his result. One of my favorite things, I actually looked on Instagram. I followed this like meme account, your boy Scott Jurek. And one of my favorite memes was like this meme of like, basically a guy pretending to be Hayden. And then like, it was basically like Hayden's reaction when all of a sudden Adam Peterman shows up and they're like coming into aid stations together. And it's like, this guy's like going along and he's just like, oh my God, where did this guy come from? It was so funny, I think. But like Hayden did like a really good job of like, executing his plan and not panicking too. So I think it's a really solid performance.
Yeah, it was, the men seemed to have really good camaraderie out there. Adam and Hayden and Arlen Glick, who was third, just spoke like, they just had such a good time out there. They chatted about fly fishing and hunting and their dads. Like they had a really great time. It sounds like truly. Adam talked about how it took him forever to catch Hayden. Like he's like, I could see him and I could hear him. And it was just like, he's never going to get here. Like, where is he type of thing. So I think that they had some fun on Cal Street before I think Adam was ultimately just moving a lot better than Hayden at that point. Arlen Glick of Ohio, he was one of my picks. Like he hasn't run 100 slower than 15:20, I think, going into this race. While he hasn't maybe been on this terrain for a lot of those races, he's a very calm, patient racer and has the nicest teeth, I think, of anyone in the field. Maybe I believe that he comes from a Mennonite family and I don't think they drink coffee, and that might explain a lot. But he sat in the finish line chute, like he got changed and then he sat in the finish line chute for hours, welcoming the finishers coming in, just giving them hugs. So I think Arlen we called him Arlen's Darlins is what people referred to his fans as in the live chat. And I think we are all Arlen's Darlins now.
Oh, I love it.
And then we got the Nike boys with Tyler Green finishing fourth in a PR. He made it under 16 hours. I think he was pretty happy to get everything he could out of his body. I helped Rachel take his shoes off at the finish line as he just kind of laid there. He was pretty well spent, but I think it was a good kind of spent out there. His teammate Drew Holman finished in fifth. Ludo Pomeray from France. I think he's the oldest in the top 10 at 46, first Masters athlete. That's something to note. The women's field had one woman under 30 in Emily Hawgood. The men had a number of 20 somethings in the top 10, including Adam Peterman at 26, taking the win. The youngest athlete in the field was Adam Peterman. So just interesting that the women's field had like more Masters, more 30 somethings in the top 10. The men's field had a few more 20 somethings thrown in the mix. But Ludo was top master, 46 years old, finishing a sixth, a very respectable sixth. Vincent Viet, another French athlete, finished seventh. He ran a really great race.
Yeah.
I think he was I don't think he was on anyone's radar coming in, and super good seventh place. Alex Nichols and Cody Lind had an all out, like truly, I think all three of these guys were on the track at the same time. Like Vincent Viet was 16:28:22. Alex Nichols was 16:28:34. Cody Lind was 16:29:38. And like there was a ton of chaos at the finish line as all these guys basically came in together. I don't think I've seen anyone as happy as I've seen in Alex Nichols and Cody Lind coming back to once again get those top 10 bibs going into next year. They were so happy. And then Scott Trayer, our next Masters athlete, in his bedazzled hat and his dress shirt and his like naked sports bra pack filled with ice, was 10th. It was a really cool like way to round up the men's field, I think. And then Adam Kimball, Truckee local, fan favorite, finished with his baby, was 11th, but it was a little bit more of a spread in the men's field back to 11th. I think it was probably 10 or 15 minutes. But still, once again, 90 minutes or so from first to 10th in the men's race is very tight racing.
Yeah. Whereas last year it was closer to 5 hours.
It was spread out. But yeah, I think that is the racing we're going to cover this week. Our brains are mostly mashed potatoes right now, but
that's especially yours, Corrine.
Yeah, I've gotten some sleep at this point, so I'm feeling good. I think the next thing we want to touch on before we get kind of to like those race recaps really is that we really want to touch on going into these races on Friday. We all got really horrific news. I know the first thing or the last thing I texted Keeley before she went to bed Friday night was that joy is a form of protest. I'm like, don't let this weigh you down. I know this is really sad and really scary, but joy is a form of protest that comes from our predominantly like people of color that has been like the women's protest within that population. And I think that that's something that we can bring into this news right now with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which I think we all knew was coming. But it was a hard way to go through Friday, I think, ahead of a big race weekend for many of us. And I'm glad that a bunch of people with uteruses got to have their own autonomy to do what they wanted on Saturday out there. But I think we want to discuss a little bit like what this ruling means, because it's inextricably linked to Title IX and to transphobia and all sorts of other things that are issues within our community. And so we're going to talk about it a little bit before we kind of get to our meat and potatoes. And so I'm wondering if one of you want to talk with kind of what is the overturned ruling and then kind of what some of the fallout has been. And we can talk about some of the positive things that we're seeing in our community coming out of it as well.
Cool. Yeah. So Friday, I feel like we all were shocked with seeing that this come out so soon, that they did decide to overturn Roe v. Wade. A lot of people cite it within the Supreme Court, citing that it didn't follow the Constitution because the Constitution doesn't protect a right to the abortion. So yeah, Corrine texted me that, and that stuck with me throughout the entire day. I shared it to all of my crew, and we were all trying to really channel that joy, just because obviously going into the race, that's the only thing you can do for that very day. And so a lot of people think that Justice Alito is kind of like one of the masterminds behind overruling this. And that he's been kind of integral in getting this overturned since he began on the Supreme Court, that now the states have their own jurisdiction to decide what to do about abortion. And upon releasing this, 13 states had kind of what's called a trigger law in place, which means as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned, this law would go into place, because the majority of Americans clearly don't approve of this. It's kind of sad that this came to the head. But again, I guess it would be also bad if the Supreme Court leaked something and then was also swayed by popular opinion, and that would kind of question the legal system. And so I don't know if there was a good solution here, but I don't think we wanted this to happen so soon.
Yeah, I think they're trying to undermine the court, but I think the court is in a way undermining itself, right? Like it's this notion of like, what is the court good for if the court, there's no separation of church and state in this sense, right? In which you've got predominantly largely religious views for most people is what steers this kind of debate. But I think some of the biggest fallout, right, is that it's talking about these trigger laws, talking about laws that were in effect pre-Roe, like in Wisconsin, for example. There's a law that's in effect pre-Roe that like goes into effect. And the only reason it hasn't been a total ban right now is that Wisconsin has a Democratic governor, but because the state is so gerrymandered, I'm from Wisconsin, it's very gerrymandered. The state Senate and House are Republican run. And so there's like this weird veto power that they're kind of like working out right now. And it seems really messy, but between these pre-Roe rules and then these trigger laws, which are almost total abortion bans. I mean, the Texas ban that went into effect this time last year was like the heartbeat ban, meaning that basically like it wasn't fetal viability anymore. That was the ban, which is 23 weeks. It was down to like 6 weeks type of thing, which a lot of women don't even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks potentially. And what that means though, is that if we look at all those states that either have trigger laws in effect or have pre-Roe laws in effect, or will likely have a more stricter abortion ban, outside of like health of the mother type of thing, which even then that gets messy in a lot of these states with ectopic pregnancies. You basically have to wait until a woman is dying to intervene, which is insane. They look at the population of women or people who are of childbearing age in the US, or who could bear a child. And approximately 50% of people who fall within that childbearing range wouldn't have access to abortion in their home state, which is going to put further stress on other states like California and Washington, and Montana that will continue to provide abortion care. And so that's going to be, I don't know, I think in the short term, that's going to cause a lot of issues. And in the long term, it'll help alleviate some of those issues. But it's very scary and it's very messy. And it's this idea that we'll regulate certain things. And I don't know, like we're not going to take away someone's guns, but we'll take away their right over their body. Like to me, that's just like,
right.
Oh, I know it's very political, but it's also very insane.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I do want to say too is, I mean, when I received this news on Friday morning, the only thing that I could do was just start crying because it has so many different implications. And, we can go into this later about how it affects us personally. But one thing that I do see is a little bit of hope is that when something like this happens, there is a pushback, right? So while Justice Alito is trying to, I think, like being a constitutional purist and the fact that he thinks that the right to an abortion isn't protected against the Constitution, what we can do is like locally at the state level is that instead of, having these laws that are banning abortions, we can actually pass laws. And that's protection. That's not citing a precedent of a Supreme Court ruling. That's actually passing laws in certain states to protect those rights. So I do see it as hope that hopefully in the states where that we're that 85% where people are, against this, that we can actually pass laws to protect it. And then hopefully that can lead to some pushback on this.
Yeah. Cause I mean, one of our biggest concerns when this leaked, I think, was the idea that while you and I, the three of us might not be directly impacted by this, we live in fairly progressive states. We are women of means. We come from families of means. We have a support system. We will not be as greatly impacted as some of our listeners, as some of our friends, people of lower socioeconomic standing, people in the trans community, people in the non-binary community are more greatly targeted by this kind of thing. And so, I think it's easy to sit here and we'll be scared, but also to not have to worry about it as much as, someone else where it will gravely impact their life or their partner's life or their family's life. And then we've seen this kind of immediate response. I think Keeley, you pulled these Plan B stats, and those track with the Texas heart rate ban stat, in which I think something like out of state or out of country even purchases for medical abortions. So the pill form of abortions, the sale went up exponentially in the state of Texas in the past 12 months. And the same thing is being seen with the purchase of Plan B right now. And that's having further fallout. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit more about some of the other responses to the overturning.
Yeah. And I guess also in regards to the pill or to the abortion pill, that's still legal, right? You can still buy something across state lines and have it shipped in. But again, we don't know how far some states will go and make that illegal as well. But yeah, right. As of now, that's still legal. So that's an option. And there's been a lot of stories actually, throughout the New York Times from local community moms who are kind of taking their daughters or sons' high school classes under their wing and buying 8 to 10 different Plan B pills so that they can have some for their friends and just to make sure that they're safe. And kind of doing this community give and take where there's some women that have extra pills and maybe they'll kind of pass them around the community as they need to. But this has kind of led to a really high increase in buying Plan B. So there's up 600% is a Sticks Restart, which is a brand of Plan B since this has gone live. So that's pretty crazy, which could just further drive up the price, right? Because as demand increases, if they can't meet that demand, they're going to have to increase the price, which again is going to let out some of those women who might have been able to afford it before that price went up, who are lower socioeconomic class, who can no longer get an abortion. Mm-hmm. That's going to further ostracise those women. And so I guess another response to this is that women are talking about traveling to other states to get abortions. And that's also not illegal yet. So that is an option. And some of the states are kind of responding. And in Portland, exactly, Planned Parenthood is saying that they're going to be building a clinic kind of near the border of Oregon and Idaho so that they can deal with this problem. And I'm sure a lot of other states where abortion is legal are going to follow suit in this as well, because there are going to be a lot of people crossing those borders to get this done, especially in a healthy way.
I mean, the government's talking about building clinics on federal land. So I think of things like reservations that's sovereign land. So, it's different. And I wonder, and I hope if that will be helpful in states. The practitioners might still be targeted, i.e. will their licenses be targeted because they are practicing within the state of Wisconsin, for example, but they are practicing on sovereign land, being on the reservation. And if there are legal loopholes to keep practitioners from losing their licenses, from being served legally with being threatened with the risk of going to jail. I'm wondering, what that looks like, and kind of, I think it's being fought legally on a bunch of fronts. I know that there are current battles going on in Utah, trying to kind of hang up some of these things. There are DAs in Texas that are actively fighting this. I was sent a link today by Ladia and Elizabeth Carey, who you guys will get to hear more from in the coming weeks, about a DA in Travis County, Texas, named Jose Garza, who has publicly refused to prosecute anyone seeking an abortion under SB 8. And there are several other DAs that have done the same. And I think that is really powerful, right? To have people in these states where these laws are going into effect to say, I'm not going to prosecute this. Like, that's not fair. That's not right. And I think that is, to me, these are beacons of kind of hope in what seems like a really murky, dark time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the same went in Utah too, where a judge actually blocked the state's near total abortion ban from going into effect for 14 days to kind of allow time for the court to hear the challenges from the community to the straits trigger law. So that maybe that's also hopeful for Utah as well.
And I think we're going to kind of round out some of this and then we'll kind of move on from there. But, there are companies like Oura Ring. Keeley and I sent a text back and forth. Keeley's fighting a giant spider in her office right now. She's freaking out. I'm not sure if we're going to leave this in or not, but Keeley's currently losing it in her office.
I think I got it. Sorry, okay. I hate spiders.
Okay, I do too, but your face was just, people watching the YouTube are going to want to tune into that part, because
we'll leave it in.
It was great. But there are companies that are, I think, another beacon of hope, right? Are there companies like Oura Ring, who we work with? A difference between Oura Ring and Whoop is that you own your data with Oura Ring versus Whoop. You don't have access to your raw data. And in a moment like this, in which we use Oura Ring for menstrual and fertility tracking, they have promised that is your data. It's not anyone else's data. They're not going to sell it to anyone. That they are here to protect your data and protect your information. And based on our ability to access raw data from them, as opposed to them owning us and owning our data, that to me is heck yeah, you're doing it right. Big thumbs up, pat on the back type of thing.
Yeah. Couldn't be prouder to wear my Oura Ring after I read that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there are a lot of companies that have come forward, Starbucks, Tesla, Yelp, all sorts of people have come forward and said that they will help their employees who live in states where there might be a total ban on abortions to travel to a state where, or for their spouse to travel to a state, right? Because it's not just who is employed, to seek an abortion. We actually got an email from CTS this week. While most of our employees are in Colorado and in Washington and in California, we do have employees in North Carolina and Utah and other places where they might be impacted by this. And they said, hey, what we can do is we can provide up to $2,000 to help you or your spouse if needed. Please let us know. Over the, coming months, weeks, months, years. I know Adidas just did the same thing as well, offering that to employees. While most of the employees reside in a place like Oregon, with remote work, we're kind of everywhere right now. So it's good to see companies stepping forward. And then my last spiel about this is that I think it's really important to normalize abortion. One of the stats that really stood out to me this week was that 1 in 4 women will seek abortion care in their lifetime. And I shared this with Keeley and Hillary ahead of time to not surprise them. It's not something I've talked about very publicly or with anyone, because it's, my body, my choice. But a decade ago, basically, as of this summer, a decade ago, as a young 21, 22-year-old, I needed an abortion. And I was talking to a really good friend recently and telling her this, and she said, like, I'm so happy you chose you 10 years ago. Like, I'm so happy you chose you. And I think that that's really important that I had that decision. It's really important that, like, I was not in an emotional, financial, I was not in college at the time. Like, I was trying to protect my spot on the national team. Like, I had these, these Olympic goals and dreams, and to have this surprise that I was not ready for, being able to choose and make that choice for me was really, really important. And while I don't regret that decision, I regret that I did it totally alone, that I didn't want to tell my teammates, my coaches, my friends, my parents, like no one. Like, I had to do it completely alone, because I don't think it was shame, but I think it was this, like, I didn't want to have to explain myself to anyone. And I regret that I haven't been able to talk about it. And I think for me, it's not this shame or guilt over that decision. It's that society makes us feel like those decisions aren't valid and that people should get to weigh in on those decisions. And while we've talked about the leak of Roe v. Wade, I've had people reach out to me, kind of expressing a similar feeling and a similar experience. And I think it's really important to know that you're not alone, and that it's not uncommon, and that you shouldn't feel guilty or ashamed about it. And while this is not meant to shock or awe anyone, I think that my goal in, like, very publicly telling people this right now is that it kind of feels like a Me Too. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's hard to believe that your friends have been sexually harassed or assaulted. It's hard to believe that the people that you care about have had to go through, have had to seek abortion care. But the truth of the matter is that it's incredibly common, and that by living in the shadows and by not talking about it, it, like, continues to extend that shame that is, like, totally internalized on other young women. So that's me. I want you to know that I'm a face of that too, and that you're not alone, and that you're heard, and that you're seen, and that my DMs are always open, I guess, is the continuation of that. But it's one of those things where I think it's important to normalize it, because it's not people that you don't know or don't understand. It's people that are in your life more than likely. So be kind. The last thing I'll say is that I distinctly remember hearing about a college or a high school classmate. I think I was a sophomore in college. And I remember hearing through the grapevine, maybe from my parents even, that she'd gotten pregnant and that she had to get an abortion. And I just remember it was like this, like, oh my goodness, like juicy gossip, like taboo. And instead of, like, that was the reaction, as opposed to, like, oh my goodness, like, I hope she's okay. Mm-hmm. Like, that must be so scary. And I hope that she's okay. And that must have been a hard decision. And I hope that she's okay. And so I think that, like, that's the narrative that I want to change, is that it's not taboo. It's not this thing that needs to be hush hush or in secret. Like, you make the right choices for you. You tell who you want to tell, and you protect yourself, but it shouldn't be like salacious. It should be, wow, that sounds really scary and really hard. And I hope that you're okay. So I hope anyone listening to this is okay. And if you need someone, we're in your corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a woman behind that abortion,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a statistic in a way, but I'm also a person. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the ending of our results, we'll go through some statistics for everybody. But the women who FKT, who we talked about last year, or last week, we have over half of the FKT set for 2022 are by women this year. So hats off to women who FKT. Their initiative is definitely working, and they're getting more women out there setting new FKTs. So
that is joy.
The other week, and that is so cool.
Joy in the form of protest, I think, is what we're going to all carry with us all summer long.
Uh-huh.
There was a cool grant initiative too that you pulled up, and there was another one that we'll piggyback off of this in a second. Can you tell us a little bit about the Trail Sisters and DNF collaboration?
Sure. Yeah. So back in 2021, Trail Sisters and the Northface kind of started this initiative where they gave 40 mothers $140 for childcare. However, this year they upped that, and they're actually giving away 20 grants of $400 for 2022 to help cover some of those childcare expenses that women need, so that they can get out and train and get out and adventure and get out and have some time by themselves. And so I really like what they're doing there, because one of the biggest things that holds women up is having to deal with their children, because that's a big time commitment. And so being able to at least give them a little bit of extra money to help do that lift is pretty awesome. So hats off to Trail Sisters and Northface.
Yeah. And a cool thing that came up recently, because USA Track and Field Nationals, Outdoor Nationals just happened in Eugene, Oregon, and Allison Felix partnered with the And Mother organization, and they provided free childcare for families competing at USA Track and Field Nationals. And I thought that was really cool. And the And Mother organization is just doing a phenomenal job being present and being part of that. And when I saw that post and that Allison Felix was partnering with them for that initiative at USA's, I was blown away with like their initiative, but also the fact that women are helping women, right? That like women, like no one else is like, it's like the rescue is not coming, except rescue is like each other. And I really just like it made me feel all the feels knowing that they were taking care of one another at USA's last weekend. That's all I got. Are we ready to meet? Are we ready to meat and potatoes? We kind of mashed potatoed our way through news and some heavy topics, but maybe the thing that you all are actually here for is to listen to us talk a little bit more about what went down at Western States and what went down at San Juan Solstice. Because I think there are always lessons to be learned when we find success and when we don't find success. And so we're going to start with Keeley's Western States 100. People who watch the live stream probably heard me near hysterical, maybe in tears of joy, watching Keeley climb into the Devil's Thumb aid station, basically right with Emily Hawgood and Ruth Croft, only to have her day end not that much further up the trail. And so Keeley, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what happened out there, and then we'll kind of talk you through some other race specific questions.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of time to think back on this now because it's been a couple of days and I've had nothing to do. So I've got to think a lot about it. And one of the things that I went into this race doing was really nailing all of the things I could control, because last year I didn't control much. So I went in super naive. I didn't control my fueling. I didn't control my crew. I didn't control my cooling. And that resulted in, not the best race. And so this year I practiced a lot of things that I can control. So I went in with this controlled mindset. And while that's a really good thing to have going into an ultra, it's also, a little bit of a bad thing going into an ultra, because we do these races because there's also an aspect that we can't control. Right. And so I guess, going through the race, I felt super in control, which was a really cool feeling. I felt in control of everything from my fueling to my cooling, to seeing my crew, to my race strategy, and was feeling awesome. Like I ran the first 12 miles really strong, had a little bit of a hiccup there where I sprained my ankle kind of in the high country. It was bad, but nothing crazy. Again, I still felt in control. It was runnable. It was angry for a couple miles, but I continued on and just used it as a way to treat myself to the downhills a little slower and to keep my quads fresher for later in the race. So I didn't think too much of it. But that was always still something I was noticing on the downhills. But again, as I was running, I was doing everything else I could do. So I was fueling, being super excited to see everybody. Like it was joy, right? It was absolutely incredible. I was running within myself, not thinking about anybody else. And with the fitness that I had, I was running super well and I was just super happy. But then, I was running up Devil's Thumb, again, feeling really great. I was looking forward to the canyons, which is really crazy to say, but like I'd been doing so many workouts from my coach, Tyler, where I was climbing these crazy mountains during, really hot days or really rainy days and all these things that really tested me mentally, that once I got to the canyons in the race, I was excited just for some uphill. And so, I climbed the first one, descended the first one pretty well, climbed the first one pretty well, and then descended into the second one, still keeping myself pretty controlled, laying off the gas a little bit on the downhills as I'd been doing, just because that ankle was a little finicky. And then, as you're babying an ankle, I find you are more likely to sprain it again. And actually, since doing this, I've actually looked it up. Your reaction time to correct a sprain also goes down when it's already sprained. Fun fact. So I was about 1.5 miles from the aid station at the bottom of the second canyon, right when it kind of turns into those switchbackies downhills. And just rocked it like so hard that I almost fell over and, got up like, okay, that was really stupid. That's my second time. Like I need to chill, and like immediately just tried to run. And it was just this jarring pain, super unstable ankle. That was just like this shooting pain medially that just felt completely wrong. But again, I was trying to stay optimistic. I was like, okay, let's just get down to the aid. Like there's only a couple miles of downhill left. So I kind of, jog walked my way down, gimping over the rocks. kind of limped through the aid station, filled up my water, and then was like, okay, but I think I'll be able to run some of this uphill. Because that canyon is like the one where you kind of run some, hike some, right? It's not all hiking. It's not nearly as steep as the first one. And as soon as I tried to start running, I realized there was like no way I could even wait it going uphill. It was just this insane pain on the medial side. And I was just like pretty certain, or at least concerned, that I had done some serious damage, because I've broken an ankle in the past. And so I walk up that whole canyon, pretty certain that I'm not going to continue, because I've been in this boat before where I kind of know what a sprained ankle feels like and what something worse than that feels like. And it did not feel like a sprain anymore. And I couldn't run without just excruciating pain and without a limp. And so got to the aid station, met the most lovely physical therapist I've ever met in my entire life.
Shout out to the crew and of the volunteers out there. Many of them have volunteered for 5, 10, 15, 20 years at these aid stations. Mm-hmm. If you want good medical, you want good PTs, you want good volunteers, it's Western States has got it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And her name was Tanya. She's this lovely physical therapist who flies herself on her own dime every year from Florida to come help with this race because she loves it so much. And she was basically in tears for me as we kind of navigated the, like, what to do, right? She was like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's not broken, but again, like, we don't know 100% anything, but we think we can, tape you up and we'll see how that works. And taped me up, and it was not really any better, still unable to run. And me, her, and my crew, we kind of just hashed it out for like an hour of like, what is the goal of my race? How is my ankle feeling? Am I able to run? Am I willing to walk 45 miles to finish this and potentially damage it more? And ultimately, like, at the end of the day, I decided to call it because I couldn't run a step more.
We were getting texts from Jason Coop and from Topher Gaylord, who were out at Michigan Bluff where this decision was being made. And I think Topher's text read something to the effect of like, everyone's in tears. Like, I'm in tears. Like, everyone, like the whole aid station is in tears for Keeley right now. And so it was, I don't know that any race besides Western States brings that out of everyone out there. Everyone is so invested in getting every runner through the race and to have their best days. And so to get that text from Topher was devastating for us to hear. Because we were biased but unbiased in our journalistic intentions of doing the live broadcast. But we knew that was a really hard decision. And it was really clear that it had been like very thought through, because the last footage we got of you was like you and JT and you kind of working your way across the aid station. And then we didn't hear anything for a long time, and then got that news and we were like, oh, okay. And the next thing I saw was Jeffrey Stern at like 1 a.m. And I was like, how is Keeley? And he's like, we're already talking about what golden ticket race we're going to next year. And so let's kind of like work through this idea. Like, we're going to get to that point of your story, right? Mm-hmm. The like, what golden ticket race, like the fire has been relit type of thing. Mm-hmm. But what about this idea of like, I really, this is beautiful. You put it in the show notes, this idea of joy and pain, that they can coexist at the same time. And like, how are you processing kind of the last 3 days have seemed a little rough, but that you're in a much better place right now. Like, how are you processing the joy of like running a brilliant 50 miles and the pain of knowing that your day ended before you wanted it to? And then how are you going to be moving forward kind of out of that? Yeah.
So one person that really, really helped me with this was my like crew chief, Danielle Snyder, she's been on the podcast. She's absolutely incredible. And one thing she just kept reminding me is that like, we're allowed to feel all of these things, even if they're contradictory to one another. So it's like, yeah, I was in there feeling absolute joy because this experience was incredible, but I also felt like huge heartbreak. And it also felt like, totally unfair, out of my control, unreal. But at the same time, there was a part of me that was saying like, oh, I could have tightened my shoe earlier. I could have done more PT. I could have been tougher. I could have, done all of these things. Right. And so there's all of these conflicting emotions that are just kind of beating down at you. And I think at the end of the day, I just had to accept that they were all thoughts and they were all valid thoughts that I had. And that was kind of what shaped the day. And while some of them were super painful and some of them were really, really exciting and really happy, like they all deserve their own little place. And so obviously it didn't happen overnight. Like everybody I saw that day, if I knew them and they asked me what happened, I just burst into tears because it was real and it was raw. And I think a lot of people pride us for being tough in this sport. And I think we're really tough. I think there's so many people that are really tough. I still think I'm really tough, but I think it's also really smart and really healthy to embrace when things are not fun and really hard as well. And that doesn't make us less tough, right? It makes us human. And so, yeah, I kind of just let myself feel everything. And I think after a couple of days, I'm now just able to like reflect on it and be like, you know what? I crushed what I could control. I crushed the first 55 miles. I loved every minute of it until I sprained my ankle that second time. And that's what I learned that year. I learned that I could do what I was planning to do. So I'll just have to go back next year and actually do it. So
yeah. And I think it's, we talked before we hit record about, things are a little TBD. You're working on figuring out that ankle, and we are all rooting for you, but just kind of to finish up a few more of those thoughts about the race too, just kind of like, so obviously your body felt good. You were staying cool. The canyon climbing was no big deal, which we love to hear. Good job, Coach Tyler. But what, like you've talked a lot specifically this year about not under fueling and really trying to nail your race day fueling. You inspired a bunch of our listeners to crush their fueling based on how many gels you consumed at Gorge 50K. So Western States is a notorious race for being hard on the stomach. Obviously your day ended early, but were you crushing your fueling goals for that first bit of the race?
Yeah, I was absolutely crushing my fueling goals, which is like awesome because I actually increased my fueling for the high country because I'm a lowlander. So I was trying to consume a little bit more than normal. And then, I kept eating and tried to make myself at least have one bite, even if it was like sort of a moderate sized bite of real food whenever I saw my crew. And really just was prioritizing keeping fueling and not having an excuse to my crew to be like, oh, shoot, I forgot to eat all my food. Because I think it's easy to do that sometimes. You get so caught up in it. And then all of a sudden fueling becomes like the scapegoat, which obviously there's other reasons why fueling can go wrong too. But I think sometimes it's easy to forget and then it's easy to blame instead of using it as a way to kind of dig yourself out of that hole. And so, I was really crushing the fueling. I was actually telling someone at the beginning of the race that I had to finish my entire pack, or my sister said she would I don't even remember what she said she would do. She's like, if you get here and your pack's not empty, I'm going to be so mad at you. And so I was like, that's my goal.
Crew we want. I love it. And I think it's a really good spot for us to drop the other hint we've been talking about over the course of the last couple of weeks, is that Beyond Athletic Greens, the other really cool sponsor that we're excited to work with for the remainder of the year to keep us not just fueled during our races, but more so fueled all the rest of the time. It's this company called The Feed. It's a group that our very own Hillary Allen, has been working with all season. And while we are just getting started with them, I'm wondering, before we hear about Hilly's amazing run at San Juan Solstice, I'm just wondering if, Hilly, you could give us a little tidbit on what The Feed is and what our listeners should know about The Feed.
Yeah. I mean, and the cool thing with The Feed is I've had the pleasure working with them this year, and I know you both are familiar with them, but it's kind of like your one-stop shop for everything like an endurance athlete needs. Like I do a lot of different sports, right? So racing, running, but also on a bike, I fuel very differently. And in the past, it was a little bit difficult for me to kind of stay within one nutrition brand, because I can basically eat like a whole meal on a bike and still like do really well. Or, with running, I was a little bit more finicky. And so working with The Feed has kind of been a game changer for me, because I can pick the sport I'm doing, then I can pick my fuel. So I can pick the hydration, the gels, recovery. This is tools, or even, different kinds of shakes. They have, supplements and breakfast replacement meals too, as well. And I can kind of create my own personalized fuel box. But that's what I really love. So I can like mix and match. I mean, I just kind of highlighted some things that I was consuming for my San Juan Solstice race. And it was a variety of different gels. And I've been able to try out some new brands I had never been able to try before, like Never Second. And they have energy gels, but also hydration mixes. And I can kind of mix and match that with Goo Roctane, as well as Scratch Labs that I've used in the past, Spring Energy, and JoJ bars. it's awesome. So I've been
a little bit of everything.
Like literally, I thought I was just one person that would use like the same gels over and over again, right? Because that's like kind of what I had practiced in the past. But then I was always kind of especially after a hot race or something, maybe I had a bad experience on the course, like maybe I'd blame it on the nutrition and I'd be like, I'm sick of this flavor. I can't use it anymore. And now I have the freedom to kind of test a bunch of different products and see what really works. And it's been awesome. One thing I have to mention though, is like, it's local here in Boulder. And so I've been able to actually try local nutrition companies, like this brand called Honey Bunchies. It's literally like honey and like nuts. It's like the best thing ever. But yeah, you could get those all from the feed. So, and it's awesome because, it's like a one-stop shop. So you guys can use it for, your
mix and match, right? We're goo for life, but if we want some breakfast oatmeal, if we want some recovery tools, there's some balls. We get to kind of create our own boxes every month moving forward. And I'm excited to kind of mix and match and try some different things as we roll forward with them, but we'll put a link in our show notes for you to go give the feed a try as well. But it's kind of nice since, you can get all your stuff in one place. And I think with that, Hilly, we just want to hear a little bit more about San Juan Solstice. Well,
I mean, to talk about nutrition, also, I crushed it. Nice. Yes, I was so happy because, I was panicking a little bit because it's at high altitude. Like the lowest part on the course is in Lake City, and Lake City is at 8.6, and you immediately start climbing. So you climb up to 13,000 feet and you top out at 13,300 feet. Okay. And you're on the Continental Divide / Colorado Trail for 10 to 12 miles. And these are kind of in some meaty sections of the course, like between mile 23 and like 35. So like you kind of undulate up around there. So what was like, I was practicing, altitude running, practicing my nutrition, but sometimes you never know if you're pushing a little bit too hard and what'll go wrong. But I was able to consume 200 to 250 calories an hour, like throughout the whole thing. I thought of you, Keeley, at the end, like the last 30 minutes, I'm like, taking this gel, let's go. And it was really cool.
That's so important. I'd be mush at that point, I think. Going at altitude is hard.
It's so hard. And I didn't feel nauseous. I didn't throw up. There was one point when I got a little bit sick of I just wanted pure water, like ice cold water, just because it was kind of hot. I didn't want I usually have one bottle with scratch and one with water. And so I didn't really want the scratch thing, but still, I was able to consume gels to the very end. I actually told my parents were there. They were playing crewing for me. And so I told them, I was like, check my pack, make sure that everything's empty. So that was also a goal of mine, to make sure that everything that I put in there, I had consumed. But that was a really big confidence booster. And I say, I know I raced San Juan Solstice and ran a fast time, but I was thinking about UTMB during this race because that's always very, it's a long distance, 100 miles. And I think the fueling and that strategy, if I had to keep going, I definitely could. And I think it was because of the nutrition, and my recovery has been on point. And I have to say it's because of the race day nutrition.
So I've got a question for both of you. And this kind of tees up something that Keeley mentioned before, this idea of thinking you're tough and thinking you're durable and having that kind of shattered. And I'm wondering, obviously, Keeley, you're kind of actively working through this right now. And Hillary, you did work through this last year at UTMB. You had that really scary moment where you stepped on a rock funny and you felt your foot and you said, oh no. And you ended up pulling out of the race, before I think any of us anticipated something like that might happen. And so I'm wondering, from both of you, Keeley, where you're sitting right now, and Hillary, kind of having worked back from wondering if you're tough enough, how does San Juan Solstice play into that, as far as this being another kind of brick in the wall of the foundation of being yes, I am tough. Yes, I am durable. Yes, I can do hard things. And then Keeley will kind of ruminate on where you're sitting still right now.
Oh man, Corrine, you're going to make me cry because I told Keeley that I might cry in this episode because oh man, I'm going to do it. But it just hit me so hard. Like, damn it. But like hearing Keeley, like knowing how much effort and like work you put into your recovery, like I felt that last year when I was recovering from my foot break, and I felt so fit going into UTMB. And then for something to happen like that you can't control, and then it just ends your race. Like I was just gutted for you. Like I know how that feels. But you know, what I can say, you know, hindsight is kind of 2020. Like I thought I re-broke my foot. I, you know, took some time off, and then I didn't have another race until like a couple months later. And it really fueled my fire. And then I had one of the best races of my entire life, like at Madeira. And I've been feeling like being able to work with my coach and like really seeing, like I have this mantra, like believe your best athletic days are ahead of you. And that might seem silly in a world where like one day I'm not going to be PRing and like running my fastest times, but whatever, I'm still going to believe it for forever, because you're constantly evolving as an athlete and as a person. And, you know, 4 years ago, I wouldn't have had the strength to pull out to UTMB. I would have just gutted it out and like maybe had something more severe. And now, you know, I have been running things and times and workouts I never have done, even before I broke my foot, before I had that crazy accident. So and running San Juan Solstice is part of that. Like I never thought that, you know, I would be able to perform like I wanted to, or to push my body like I wanted to. And I think if you give yourself the space to heal in times when, you know, you're kind of forced to, life has a way of working it out. But I think it's also, life has a way of working out. It's like, it's not saying like a higher power or something like this. I'm just saying it gives you the space to create even like a desire of a different shape that can like consume every like pore in your body. And I think that it just makes you want it, and it makes you want to work harder, but like work smarter, I think. And watch out, world, because you know, Keeley, I think you're gonna, you know, it's when something like this happens, I think it's kind of scary, the next levels that you can reach. So
yeah, Keeley, I was going to say, like, while Hilly kind of talks about that fire being lit, you still might be in like the kindling stage of the fire. I'm wondering,
it simmer.
How does that feel to be simmering?
You know, I think this opened up a lot of things for me in terms of the simmering, because I don't think I'm quite simmering yet, because I've had a lot of injuries, right? Like feel like I'm constantly injured. And a lot of the injuries in the past were self-inflicted. I was overtraining, I was undernourished, my bones were breaking, right? My body was protesting, and those injuries in hindsight make sense. And so I say it will be a little bit of a journey for me to gain the mental capacity to accept that this one was outside of my control and not self-inflicted, and be okay with that, and realize that that doesn't make me like more prone to injury, or make me unable to keep running, or make my body broken, because that's where my mind goes. And so it's been a little bit of a journey to like remind myself that that's not necessarily the case this time. But I do feel the embers like burning a little bit. And so I can tell that they'll come back, but it might take a little bit of like mental health help. I've definitely talked to a therapist recently, and I think just picking his mind around how to reframe mine to not classify myself as someone who's prone to injury or whose body doesn't work anymore, because that's sometimes what it feels like, right? Like you're the fittest you've ever been in your entire life. You're doing everything right. You're fueling, you're recovering, you're doing all these things. And then your body breaks and you're like, now I got to build myself back up again. And so, yeah, I mean, that didn't really answer your question, but that's my rant.
No, I think that's a okay place to be, right? Like as Danielle told you, like all these feelings are really valid. And I think it's okay to sit in them and sit with them. I've got to tell athletes all the time, like go sit on a rock and like cry it out. Like that is cathartic, as a swear word that I'll not say, because I was informed this week that children listen to our podcast fairly frequently. Hi, children out there listening to us right now. But it's cathartic, right? You need to sit in that stuff, I think, to build back. And I think it's really hard to trust your body again after an injury, particularly one that's like both the ones that are out of your control and the ones that are in control. Like that's really hard, because you built trust back in your body again after these other injuries. And now you kind of have this freak accident, right? And it's like, oh, I've got to rebuild this trust again. I think that it's really great to hear that you're like, I'm working with someone, I'm talking to someone about this. And I think it's really important to highlight that like therapy is really important for any of us and all of us. And I'm glad that you've got a team around you of people. You've got your coach, you've got Danielle, you've got JT, you've got your therapist, like you've got all sorts of people, and you got JD, who I'm sure is so happy that you're home.
Yeah.
Those, like, that's all really important to hear.
Yeah. I mean, Danielle's advice was the best, but I will say that JT's was second, because he said, no matter what, Jade hasn't heard about any of this. She has no clue what happened. Doesn't matter, because she's going to love you just the same.
I love that.
I love that.
And it's like,
so
I
much.
think that's so pertinent. Like, we just need to take our names and put it in place of JD, right? Because at the end of the day, like, we're allowed to grieve it, but then we need to put it away, and we need to like love ourselves just the same. So
yeah, it's that self-worth aspect, right? Like I've had that talk with little junior biathlete kid. I was being like, are your parents still going to love you independent of how many targets you hit or miss? Yeah. Okay. Like you're fine. So I think that that's important to remember, is that it might feel devastating, and it is devastating, but it's not your self-worth. It's not your value as a human. And you're going to come back, the cliche, you're going to come back stronger, and we're going to be rooting for you. But I think there's a lot of truth in that, right? Like you are going to come back stronger, and we are going to be rooting for you. So it's going to be a journey, but we're along for it. You guys are going to hear all about it over the coming weeks and months. We're going to have ankle updates. And it's going to be the Keeley ankle update hour.
Perfect.
Delightful. I think we're ready to move on to Society Slam, round things out, send people off to their evening calls before we're done. As always, Society Slam is brought to you by Oura Ring, who we love even more with their stance they've taken this week. I think that is really, really important to reiterate how much we stand behind their product and what they're doing. And they want to continue to protect people with uteruses, people who can get pregnant, and people whose data might be wanted by their state or federal government. So thank you, Oura Ring, for that. And Keeley, you wrote that your readiness score was a whopping 40. Was that when you woke up post Western States?
So that was actually my number before States, because like I slept like 4 hours the night before, but then it went up to a 42 the day after States. And so I'm back to 80s, but it was like 40, 42, 50 for 3 days, which is so bad, but it was also indicative of how I felt, especially those 2 days after States, because you're not sleeping super well. At least I wasn't, because all I was thinking about was the race. And it was really hot. So I like can't sleep super well in the heat. And so my ring let me know.
And I think it's really important to kind of reiterate this, because we do have people that are like doing things like purchasing an Oura Ring or whatnot, and are monitoring things like readiness scores or their heart rate variability. It is a fairly perfect metric. But what I want to say is heart rate variability. Like I would caution people to like use metrics when they need them and not when they don't. Like going on a metric cleanse in and around a big race might be a really good idea, because you don't want to know that you're in the red race morning. There's no value added to your life by seeing that. And the truth of the matter is that like we know via a taper that actually your heart rate variability can drop. So that's probably where that number comes from. It's probably not indicative of like a poor performance coming up, but so maybe consider using it wisely in a periodic metric cleanse for when you don't want to influence more stress on your
I looked
life.
Back on mine. I did not look the morning before the race. That is just
strength.
Definitely not.
Okay, Hilly, you're first in the order on my Google Docs, and now you have to go first. What is your Society Slam?
Oh, sweet. So it was amazing. So, okay, the Juan Solstice is a race that I've always wanted to do, but I've either been like had a different race or was in Europe. And so I come to the check-in station at Lake City, which is this teeny tiny town. It's close to Silverton for people who know Hard Rock, but so Lake City, Colorado. And I come to the check-in table. It's like by the library in this like open little field. And I say my name, and this woman just gets so excited. She says that she's a teacher at this local school, and she pulls out my book, and she's like, I had this student. She's a local cross country runner. And like, I came into class and she was reading your book, and she's a trail runner and does the race every year. And so I got to sign her book. But the coolest thing is I got to meet Kate. She's a local runner in Lake City, and she broke her ankle. And so she heard about my book, and she started reading it during her recovery. And she said nothing had inspired her so much to like be really diligent with her recovery. And she's doing so well that she's getting ready to run. She's only missed one season. She's getting ready to do cross country the fall. And it was so cool because I also got to see her like volunteering at the race station, during the race at the aid station. I don't think that she realized that I would recognize her. So like coming through, I was like, hey, Kate, like giving her high fives. And it was great. And she listens to the podcast and she says she loves it. So shout out to you guys too.
Nice. Keeley, what do you have? You got a special message to share?
I do. So, okay, picture this. 2 girls, maybe between the ages of 2 and 5, wearing backwards trucker hats, hydration vests, and like cute little girl clothes. All right. Running around, screaming. Girls can do this too while watching the Western States live film. And this was a message I got from their father, who said that they're running around saying that they're going to run states one day because they know that other girls can do it. And that he's just so proud that he like can introduce them to the sport, and that there's women in the sport right now who are good role models for his own daughters to look up to. And so it's working, guys. Might just be 2 girls right now, but it's going to be more. And so I just love getting that and knowing that we can infiltrate the minds of girls and hopefully change that narrative and get more girls to try these sports that they can totally do.
All right. That's so cool.
That's so cool. I think I got a message similar to that, and it's not my slam, but I'll quickly say that someone's like, how does it feel to now, 10 years from now or 15 years from now, when they're interviewing someone pre-Western States, and be like, well, how'd you get into trail running? And they're going to be like, I heard Dylan and Corrine on the live broadcast, and I knew I had to do this. Like that we will be their earliest memory in trail and ultra, which makes me feel really old very quickly. But akin to that, what I want to do is I want to thank everyone that came up to me at Western States or Broken Arrow and exclaimed some variety of, we love the podcast. I got to meet a bunch of really cool people, really amazing fans of ours. And we're fans of you guys, I think is what you probably all don't realize, is that it means a lot to us to hear that feedback, that we are infiltrating your homes, including like, oh, our kids know who you are. Like we put the YouTube up on the TV, or like we listen to you out loud, and our kids listen and we recognize you. And we've had emails like that too of from dads who are sharing the podcast with their 10 and 11-year-old daughters. And to me, that is what is really special about what we're doing, is that you all are listening and you're hearing us, and we're helping you guys have these conversations in your home and with your families and with your friends. And that's why we do it. And so I just want to give a big, huge, giant thank you to everyone who has been like, hey, we like what you're doing, because it makes doing it even better and even easier and with a lot more energy. So thank you to everyone who's listening. Thank you to everyone who shares this with their friends, with their family. We couldn't do it without you. And so without further ado, we're going to bid you adieu, I guess, for today. So slide into our DMs, keep sharing the podcast, and we'll see you on the trail soon.